In this video, we're going to talk about how to create drum samples with your voice using some of the tools inside Logic Pro X. This is a fun and creative way to incorporate some truly unique sounds in your productions, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. Let's jump in. What is up? Hope you're having an awesome day. This is Jake with Musician on a Mission, and here's what we're going to cover in this video. We're going to talk about why you might want to create drum samples with your voice in the first place. We'll talk about what samples we actually need. I'll show you how to capture those sounds with your voice. Then I'll show you how to create your new unique sample pack. Then I'm going to walk you through how to sculpt your samples to get them right where you want them tonally. And then we're going to put it all together into a cohesive beat, something that we can use to build a song from. So first, why would you want to even do this? Why would you want to create drum samples with your voice? Well, the main reason here is that it's completely unique. Nobody else is going to have access to the sounds that you're creating. So if you want to be truly unique and have your samples kind of stand out from everybody else, this is a great way to do it. Another reason is it's creative. If you're into sound design and things like that, it's fun. And maybe your voice is your instrument. Maybe you're just not into playing instruments and you want to learn how to manipulate your voice and use that as your primary instrument in all of your songs. This is a great way to do that. So what samples do we need? What are the pieces of the kit that we want to make sure we have samples for? Kick, snare, toms, maybe a high, a mid, and a low. Hi-hats, a closed and an open. Cymbals, maybe you want a ride cymbal or a crash cymbal, and whatever else you might want, right? You can be as creative as you want here and just have fun with it. So now that we know what sounds we actually need, we can capture those sounds with our voice. So this is super simple. You just press record and make each sound into the mic as one long audio file. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate this now. Yeah. So I was sure to include a fun little yeah at the end there too. So we're going to use that. So now that we've got all of our sounds here, we can actually create our new sample pack. So the first thing we're going to do here is slice up the samples using Logic's Quick Sampler. Then we're going to create a new instrument with Drum Machine Designer. And then we're going to make sure that we're nice and organized within Drum Machine Designer so that when we use our samples, we know exactly where they're located. They're located in a place that makes sense to us. We know which keys on our MIDI controller we need to press in order to trigger them. So first, let's slice these up. We're going to create a new track here. We're going to select Software Instrument. They're going to come down here and make sure Quick Sampler in stereo is checked and then create. The library automatically pops up here. I don't really need to use that. And we're going to open up Quick Sampler here. I'm going to just drag and drop this audio file, and you can use original or optimized. I usually just choose optimized. And then here you can see our audio file. These are all of the sounds that we recorded. I'm going to come up here and just mute this track. Now it's out of the way, and I don't have to worry about mistakenly or accidentally pressing play and then having these just kind of like play randomly while I'm writing my beats, right? So over here, I'm going to go ahead and rename this file. Rename current file. We're going to call this Jake Mouth Sounds. So we're still currently in one long file. Let's get this sliced up. So we're going to go over here to the slice option, and you can see that this Quick Sampler is such an awesome plugin. It automatically locates the transients, the initial hits of each sound, so we don't have to go in and edit these things manually. It just makes life so much easier. So at this point, we've got markers here indicating where each sample is. We can actually move these markers around wherever you wanted to. So if for some reason, let's say the marker was right here, you can just move it over. You can adjust the sensitivity here too. depending on the signal coming in. So be sure to experiment with that if all of your samples or sounds aren't being lined up correctly. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna dump all of these new samples into Drum Machine Designer. So we're gonna come up here to the cog wheel, come down here and select Create Drum Machine Designer Track. Bam! And this automatically dumps everything that we've sliced up here into our Drum Machine Designer on the different pads. So if I were to just click on these, yeah, you can hear all of the sounds that we recorded before. Now, when you do this, it creates a MIDI region in here. So if we just play that, yeah, you can see that it lights up each of the pads. It just gives you a kind of a quick demo of what the sounds are inside of Drum Machine Designer, but we don't really need that. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete it. And now that we've got all of these samples in here, let's kind of organize things a little bit. The first thing I like to do is just go through and rename everything. We've got all these weird names here, right? So I just click play, and that's gonna be a crash. And you can change the icon. You click the gear here and go to drums, and you can select, I don't know, select a symbol. Next one, right? That's an open hi-hat. Assign a track icon, drums, open hi-hat. Now this one, I click, and there's no sound to it. What the heck is going on? We're gonna hit the gear, clear pad. There's no point in having it there. I'm actually gonna select no icon. It's just a little bit easier on the brain. We just kind of remove the icon and get it out of there. And I'm actually gonna rename this empty. So now I'm just gonna time travel through renaming and adding icons to each one of these pads real quick. Here we go. So now that we've got all of these renamed and we've got all of our icons assigned, I wanna make sure that these are sorted based on where most other drum kits and drum machines are sorted, which is indicated right here at the bottom of the pad. So you'll see here it says C1, that tells you what key it is on MIDI controller, and it says kick 1 here. So this is where the kick usually lives. So I'm just gonna drag and drop this pad into that slot. And now when I hit C1 on my keyboard, cool. Triggers my kick. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that for the rest of the samples. Again, time traveling through it. Here we go. Awesome. That looks good. Let's test it out. Cool. So now you can use this as an instrument as is if you wanted to, right? We can just key in a beat with the sounds we already have. Right? But let's take this a step further and talk about sculpting the samples. And we're going to talk about the duration. We're going to talk about pitch. We're going to talk about adjusting the tone of each of these samples. And we're also going to talk about adjusting the volume. And there's a lot more to this sampler and different ways that you can manipulate sounds. But without digging too deep into the sound design aspect, these 4 things, duration, pitch, tone, and volume, are more than enough to just kind of get started with. So let's dig into that a little bit. Now, what I like to do when I'm sculpting samples is actually record a loop of the sample that I'm sculpting and then just let it play and make adjustments as it's playing. So let's use kick here. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna record just a basic kick. Comment on that. Just gonna do a loop here. Let's loop that. So now that I've got my kick, we'll start off by talking about pitch. We're gonna use coarse to lower the pitch. Cool. So I'm okay with that pitch. You can get a little bit more granular with the pitch right here. We're not going to talk about glide in this video, but basically, coarse, that's where all the big changes happen. Next, let's talk about adjusting the tone. We're going to go ahead and add a low pass filter to this kick. Let's hit it. So right now you can't really hear a difference. That's because our filter is at 100. If we start rolling this back, you'll notice that the high end starts to roll off. That's because we've got a low pass filter here. So it would do the opposite if we picked a high pass filter. So if you wanted to roll off the lows, you can do that. But for a kick, I'm going to stick with low pass. You've got so many options here. Play around with these. Each one sounds a little different. Just going to choose fat. So basically what we're doing here is let's replicate this with an EQ curve. Let's say we're using like a 12 decibel slope. Put it down here, create a 12 decibel slope. And basically this is all we're doing. Right? We're just moving that point around the frequency spectrum. So if I turn this off, do the same thing. So if it helps you to kind of visualize what you're doing here with the cutoff knob, that's what you're doing. So let's dial that in a little bit. I'm just going to go with 50. Now let's move over to the reso knob here. And basically what this knob does is it creates a boost at the cutoff point. Okay, so you're doing something like this. That's all this reso knob does, is it creates a little boost at that cutoff point. So let's check it out. And if we get too high, you should start to hear like an actual note, the note of the frequency being boosted. So just be careful when you're using that reso that you don't go up too high, because that's just going to blast your ears. Not cool. So that's all we're doing. We're creating that boost. We're just saying, how intense do we want this boost to be? Do we want it to be here, or do we want it to be way up here? I'll demonstrate on the EQ here. So you can start to hear the note as we get higher. Let's go down a little bit. You can hear the tone, right? So basically that's all we're doing with the reso. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that back on. Let's put the reso at, I don't know, 50. And then once you have these things in place, you can move the tone of the reso with the cutoff knob. So basically, we're saying, okay, boost that reso up right here, and then move it back and forth with the cutoff knob. We're just moving that point, just like this. Reso, up, and then cutoff, moving. Okay, let's turn that off and do that with these controls. Okay, so just a demonstration of how this all works. Let's go ahead and dial this in for kick. I probably want a little bit more of a lower end reso, right? So I think the 50 boost is pretty good. And I think I want a more gradual slope here. So the more gradual slope tends to have more of an attack on the front. And then if we do like a steeper slope, you kind of dull the attack a little bit more. So I like to go on drum samples and things that I want to really punch through. I usually go with a lower number, more gradual slope. And actually, you'll be able to see exactly where that happens if you use your analyzer on an EQ. So that's where the reso bump is. If we want our kick to come down, we just need to move that point with the cutoff. We're starting to see different points where the reso is being boosted. I like that right there. Let's crank up the drive now. And I'm actually going to compensate for that with the volume right here. I'm not afraid to dial in aggressive settings when it comes to drive on drum samples, so I'm going to go ahead and keep it at 100. And then I'm looking over here at my meter, and just as kind of a general rule of thumb, I like to hover right around minus 15 decibels there. So I'm going to adjust the volume to make sure that happens. That's pretty good right there. I'm not too picky as long as it's somewhere in the ballpark. Now let's listen to that kick one more time and make any final tweaks. Cool. I'm happy with that. Now let's do one more in-depth demonstration, and I just want to quickly go over how to adjust the duration of your samples, because that's not something that we touched on with the kick. So let's move over to the snare. I'm going to go up here, and I'm just going to move my samples so that they're on snare. And we'll go ahead and loop that. So we talked about all of our tone controls. Let's go to Q sampler main, and this is where you can adjust the duration of your actual samples. So we can see that this is super long right now. Right? Whenever this sample is played, it plays this whole chunk here. And there's a lot of silence in there, and maybe there's some like clicks and pops and mouth sounds and just kind of little glitches going on. Well, you can just drag this back. See, and I don't know if you can hear it, but there's like just like a little bit of a mouth sound at the tail end. I think it's like right in here. So let's bring this in. Now it's cut out. So we have control of how long our samples actually are. So if you're noticing some glitches and things like that, take a look at the duration of your samples. So crash, for instance, check this out. I mean, if I hit the crash on the keyboard, see, it starts to get the beginning of this yeah sample. So let's adjust this a little bit. Make sure that doesn't do that, right? And you can add crossfades here too. Just drag the crossfade. Now let's check it out. Awesome. So let's go to yeah now, right? It sounded like this was a little cut off. Well, now we can grab the beginning of that. Yeah. Yeah. Right? And we probably don't need all of that silence on the end of yeah. So let's bring that in. Yeah. Easy. We can crossfade that too. So again, that's in Q sampler main, and make sure one shot is selected. You can go into all these different areas here, but I would just recommend if you're just going for sample duration, make sure you're in one shot mode. And it's just as easy as dragging and dropping things. So let's quickly dial in a snare tone. And I want the tail end of that snare cut off a little bit more. Cool. Now I'm going to just quickly time travel through here again and make all the tonal adjustments that we just talked about here using all of these tools and all of these controls. I'm going to use these on the rest of my samples to kind of sculpt them and get them where I want. And then I'll show you exactly how to put it all together. Real quick, as I'm going through this is a good situation or circumstance where you might want to use a high pass filter instead of a low pass filter on the higher frequency instruments, right? So like a hi-hat, I'm using a high pass filter here. to get rid of the lows, manage the low end, and bring a little bit more attention to the high end on this particular sample. So all things to just kind of consider as you're sculpting your tones. Okay, back into time travel mode. Here we go. And real quick, here's an example where you might want to use band pass, where you're focusing more on the mid-range. You're creating kind of like this situation here, where you've got cutoff on the lows and the cutoff on the highs, and you're just moving this area around. So you're focusing more on isolating kind of mid-rangey stuff, right? So I'm using that on my tom. And you can move that to the left and the right. Just a quick example of where you might want to use that. Let's continue time traveling. So another learning moment here. I'm not able to get as much volume as I need out of this tom. Right, so it's sitting like down here at minus 21 decibels, and my goal is right around here, right around this minus 15 decibel spot. So I'm actually going to go into pad controls, and you can raise up the volume in this area too. So I need just a little extra juice there. I'm going to go ahead and raise the volume of just this pad. Perfect. So now that we've got all of our samples sculpted the way that we want them, we're going to go ahead and create a beat. We're going to put them all together, and I'm actually going to go through this relatively quickly. So first thing I'm going to do here is create a loop. So this is the loop that I'm going to be writing my beat into, and I'm going to make sure that this track is selected, and then I'm going to hit quantize up here in the region menu. Yours might look something like this. You can just drop it down, select 16th note. So everything that I'm playing on my MIDI keyboard automatically gets quantized as I'm playing it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to loop through once. I'm going to do, I don't know, kick and snare, and then I'll loop through again immediately afterwards and do my hi-hats. And then I'll loop through a few more times and add some more samples that we've created here. So let's go ahead and make a beat. Here we go. Cool. So there it is. That's our entire beat. Now that we've got that in place, let's quickly listen back. I'm actually going to take out that second crash there. And I might go back in and sculpt some of these sounds later. I'm going to take these toms out for now. And I'll just put that crash at the beginning of the beat. All right, I'm happy with that. Now we can just drop in some other instruments. You know, whether you want to continue to do the same thing, create instruments with your voice, or you can come in here. Just as an example, I'm just gonna pick something random. Let's see. Let's go through this bass library. I want to put a bass in here. Let's listen to a few of these. Let's try this one. Sounds pretty cool. Right? So you get the idea here. Just a super fun, creative way to get some truly unique sounds that nobody else has. And then you can even just like say to people, yo, dude, like, hear those drums? I actually did that with my voice. Like, that's pretty cool, right? So awesome.
That's how you create drum samples with your voice inside of Logic Pro. But this is just a very kind of small area of production. There's still a lot of other things involved in music production if you want your songs to sound professional. So that's why my friend Rob, the founder of Musician on a Mission, put together a free workshop where he shares these 7 steps to making radio-ready music at home. And what you're going to see inside is a completely new approach to home recording and mixing that is going to help to get you there to that professional level much, much faster. And it hasn't just worked for Rob. Over 36,000 people have already been through this workshop. They've seen results in a matter of days. So now it's your turn. If you want to learn the exact 7 steps that are going to take your productions to a professional standard, and you want to avoid wasting time, money, and effort on the wrong things, then go and check out that free workshop now. You can either click the link you see on the screen or head to the link in the description. It's completely free. Awesome, awesome stuff. Make sure to check it out. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. This is Jake with Musician on a Mission, signing off. Remember, create regardless.